Hey, good morning. It's Cashflow Mike, and I've got to tell you what, I'm going to tackle a hard topic today. And a hard topic is probably also controversial, meaning that, there's a lot of people can take one side of this issue or the other. And I'm talking about the $15 federal minimum wage. That's what I'm talking about, right? So let me set some ground rules up front. When I talk about the $15 federal minimum wage, let's set aside social justice or social issues that surround it. Let's just set that aside. Matter of fact, I'm going to take it a step further. I'm not even going to discuss what's happening with cities and those type of things that have or have tried the $15 minimum wage. Let's go back to prior to this idea. All right, so between the years 1989 and 2013, that's what I'm talking about. That's when the federal minimum wage started to rise. 1989. Basically, when I entered the professional workforce, to 2013, about 2 years after I moved to Seattle, and the idea kind of surfaced, right? So that's what I'm talking about right there. Let's talk about prior to the idea of $15 minimum wage. Now, what I want to talk about is just what happened during that time frame, 89 to 2013. So before everybody blows their stack and says, oh, no, we need to give everybody $15. Let's just talk about when it went to $7.25 from as low as $3 and, 15 cents when I started the workforce. So being a business owner and living in places like Seattle, St. Louis, and now San Antonio, I have a little bit different, unique perspective because it doesn't matter where you live. There's no cost of living adjustment for a federal minimum wage increase. So whether I live in downtown Chicago or downtown New York, Manhattan, or I live in San Antonio, $15 is just $15 absolute, right? And it doesn't spend the same in New York City as it does in San Antonio or even some of the surrounding areas. So again, let's set some of that aside and let's just look what happened to small businesses. Now, small businesses during that time, account for 70% of all job gains and all job losses. And then when I say small businesses, I'm talking about 10 employees or less. If you go to the SBA, they'll say, it could be up to 500 employees. Now, let's talk about what you and I think about as small businesses. That's 10 employees or less, right? So if that's the case, it accounts for 70% of all job gains or all job losses. Now, here's what happened during that time. From a lending perspective, right? Because I do a lot of things with banks. From a lending perspective, the bank loans, the average bank loans that a small business could get during that same time, 89 to 13, was lowered by 9%. So because of the federal wage increase, bank loans were lower that they would give. And that's because there was a 12% increase in the risk of default because average credit scores for small businesses lowered significantly. There was a sharp decline in the average business or business credit score for small businesses. Remember that 70% of all job gains and losses came, but the average health was lower, right? It was lower. So with that, here's the other two statistics I want to point out. During that time, 89 to 13, there were 4% lower entries into the market, right? 4% less people starting businesses, and there was a 5% increase in exits. So the net gain in total businesses was also lower. So think about that when we look at it. I mean, we're getting fewer people starting into a workforce or into the job market because there are few businesses being created. And the ones that are hurt the most, are the ones that are in the low skill. We're talking the restaurants, the retails, the low skill jobs are the ones that are affected the most, those type of businesses. So just throwing that out there. I know there's a lot of debate. I'm not talking about social justice because I think it comes from your heart, whether or not you want to give or not. You shouldn't be forced to, in my mind. But from a basic small business standpoint, it's actually hurt. From 89 to 13, I'm not talking about $15 minimum wage today. I'm talking about from 89 to 13. It's actually hurt small businesses all the way from 89 to 13. So before we go forward, let's learn some lessons from the past and think about how it's going to affect the 70% of the jobs that are created out there. So I'm Cashflow Mike. Thanks for listening to me. We'll talk to you soon.